image for women out there
Yeah.
who are doing something, who are struggling, and to tell them there is something better.
Yeah.
I want to be part of working with organizations that are supporting communities to grow, community organizations like Bosco Uganda, local organizations to build their capacities, strengthen the institutions so that they continue to do the great work they are doing out there. So I want to be a part of that. So I thank APC, how do I say, actors, players in the whole ecosystem of health, from the district health officers, biostats, in charges of facility, sub-county chiefs, they now call them SARS, you know, the patients even, to get their views. So it's so important that we get the views of the people and the change that they want to see, so that we define that change process and be able to work towards what we want to see. So you asked many questions, so I hope I am answering it. But I really believe that as a woman who wants to see my children and all other children, I'm really so passionate about young people, children, women, men, who working together, whether it's at the family level, work together. Why do you fight? Put your efforts together, put your resources together. I have seen families where the man is working, the woman is working, but it's only the man who is spending the money in the family. What is the money of the woman doing? Why not work together? Because together you can go far. But if you stand as an individual, you're going to fail.
Straight to their camera is there, mine is there, but otherwise. Yes. Welcome to the CEO Bench. This is House of Talent Television. My name is Eddie Okila, and this is the CEO Bench on this very fine day, morning, afternoon, night, depending on which part of the world you're actually watching the program from. Welcome to the program. Now, today, particularly on the CEO Bench, is a very interesting discussion. Is a CEO who wears a coat of many colors, born in the northern part of Uganda. The first time I interacted with him, the grandmother said, Buru Nwalo Mach. I never understood what it meant, even though I'm a native of that area. But I learned later on that it meant the ashes that gave birth to fire. Now, you are just about to have the best CEO Bench interview of a lifetime. The man has been an aeronautical engineer. He's branched into investment banking. He's been in the ballroom dancing. He is the champ himself, as well as the man who is in renewable energy space. And now, dealing with the issues of climate change. The only African man speaking at the French event that is happening in Uganda just because he speaks French. Pete, welcome to the program.
Awesome, thank you very much.
Yes, we have to spread the love first. When you do this, you spread the love like this, yes.
Awesome, fantastic.
Yes. How are you today?
Doing great, most grateful.
Well,
most grateful.
Welcome to the CEO Bench.
Yes.
We want to start this program from a very lighter note of knowing who you are.
Awesome.
The CEO Bench exists to bring people like you onto the program to share with us the life journey, the journey of leadership, self-leadership, change management, and transformation. And particularly on this show, you are here because you are nominated overwhelmingly from all across the spectrum. The climate change people nominated you all the way from South Africa. The renewable energy people nominated you all the way from France to the US Embassy in Uganda, and says, can you bring that man on the show? The local people in northern Uganda nominated you to come on the show. The people who are on the streets of Kampala nominated you to come on the show. With a vote of 50 in total, brings you to the CEO Bench today. The question is, who is Engineer Peter Nyeko? In fact, before you became an engineer, who is Peter?
Well, I'll introduce myself. So, I was born in a little town, not called Bethlehem, called Kitgum in northern Uganda.
Yes.
And my name is Odoronyero.
Okay.
Yeah.
Meaning?
Meaning the one who laughs.
Yes.
Yeah, my name is Odoronyero Nyeko. That's my name. I come from northern Uganda, from Kitgum, and yep, I was born many, many years ago, you know, when everyone in Uganda had hair like this.
Yes.
And you know, grateful that I've made my way through life, and you know, I've ended up now in you know, where I am today, sitting before you here and talking to you all right there. So most glad to be around. Yes.
Wow. Peter, are you Ugandan? Being born in Uganda is another thing, but are you Ugandan? If yes, what are the values that define you as a Ugandan?
I believe I am Ugandan, and the values are painted right here. You know, being Ugandan is all about the values that we sing about in our national anthem. It's about the values that we walk with as we go through the streets each day. It's the values of gratitude, the values of hope, the values of resilience, and the values of finding joy in everything.
Wow. Indeed. And if I am looking for you today, which village in Kitgum can I show up and I will find Odokonyero Nyeko when I am looking for you?
I don't think there's a particular village where it's possible to find me. I don't stay in one place. But I guess if you do go to certain villages across Uganda, you will probably find, you know, the impact of my work and the work I do with my colleagues at Mandulis Energy. Yeah. So a lot of the work we do is in Noya district. That's where we actually started from. And that's where we've got, you know, a number of establishments set up, renewable energy establishment. We convert waste to energy, as well as you know, making the most of the sunlight that we do have to make energy as well, and provide value addition to the farmers around us. We are also working in the refugee hosting ecosystem. Uganda is a great place, hosts over 1.5 million refugees, and so we work in Lamu district. We also work in Kiriandongo, we work in Adjumani, and we're about to start working in a few other settlements as well. But our work takes us now not just across northern Uganda, but also across significant parts of western Uganda, where we are looking at wherever there is that interesting confluence between the tourism industry or the conservation ecosystem, the refugee hosting ecosystem, and the agriculture ecosystem. That's an interesting triangle, which is so Uganda. And in between all that, there's an opportunity to always make a difference, figure out what the needs are, and have an awesome time, you know, curating solutions in tandem with the community.
Wow.
Yes.
Peter, thank you very much for that very interesting, you know, background of what you do. I want to take you a little bit back. You know, most times when we see people rising to position of leadership, of power, as we call it, in a political space, we don't know where they're coming from, and we don't know what they have done before, or what they have been through in life. So we just simply see them on the streets of Kampala, dressed nicely, looking good, putting on Ugandan. You're always carrying Uganda everywhere you go, but we don't know, where is this person, who is he, where has he come from, what does he do? You know, I want to take you back a little bit, digging deep into your personal life a little bit. Growing up as a child, or being born to your parents, did you write an application to be born to Mr. Nyeko? I suppose Mr. Nyeko is your father's name. If not, what are the circumstances that brought you to life that you know, you can remember growing up as a child?
Awesome. I believe, you know, if there is a place where people stay before they come to Earth,
yes,
I guess I'd probably send an application in and work, you know. I think of all the tracks of life one could go through, I'd rather have that one. I am most grateful for everything that the world has, you know, blessed me with.
Yeah.
Every experience. I don't believe any experience is a bad experience. Yeah. I don't believe any experience is a painful experience. I believe every experience is a learning experience, a nurturing experience, and a growing experience, and an experience through which one can be blessed to be a blessing at some point.
Yeah, that's a wonderful one. And I want to take you straight to, how did you, as a child, if you visibly remember, what did you want to be in life?
Well, If I go back, I think I looked at two things as a child. I thought about, I looked up to the skies and I'd see the stars and, see the airplanes flying over. And as I was there, with my dad, looking after the cows, or with my grandma going fishing, or with my grandpa farming, I'd look up and go, wow, what are those things up there? And then someone told me, that's a space station. Go, okay, interesting. And what else is up there? Well, those are stars, and those are airplanes. I thought, well, it would be great, to figure out how those things work.
Yes.
And so I guess that was one interesting, passion of mine as a little kid. Figuring out how aerospace vehicles work, and I guess that wasn't something which excited me a lot.
Wow. You said the two things. So how did you end up there? You were fishing with your grandmother, as you mentioned, and farming with your father, and grazing with your grandfather. Why were you not able to pick one of these from these, three different distinct people, and then you ended up in the things that are up in the sky with all this interest? What was the motivation like? Was somebody an aerospace engineer? Was somebody thinking about the things up, or it just came to you?
It's, back then, we didn't have Wi-Fi. We didn't have mobile phones. We didn't even have phones,
Yes.
or television. We just had nature,
Yeah.
and that was great, and we had stories around the campfire, around the hearth every evening.
Yeah.
We'd sit down and talk to each other. We lived quite close to national parks, so every now and again a lion would hop over and grab a cow and go and have supper as well. So we shared with the lion. So it was being at one with nature.
Yeah.
But what was important in all that was, allowing one's mind to imagine, allowing one's mind to run, to fly, to really go as far as one's mind could possibly go.
Yeah.
And if I think of looking at things from the space going down, I could still look down and figure out what's going on, on the fishing side. I could look at what's going on the farming side. I could look at what's going on the grazing side, because when you're up there, you can see everything.
Yeah.
But it also helps you appreciate how special the earth is.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's I'm most grateful for that natural environment, that any kid in a rural village in Uganda or any other part of Africa right now has that, where you see every star. And I believe there is something special about that.
Wow. Peter, just before we take a break and then we dive into the self-leadership and going up, take me through school. Were you homeschooled by your parents? Were you, educated by your grandmother who spent more times? You were the firstborn of your parents, having been through so many things according to the background check when I did with your mom, with your father, when you were nominated. I did reach out to them to say, tell me a little bit about this gentleman. And they said, yeah, he's a special child to us. Your mother actually said, I was tiny when I was married, and they didn't believe I would bear that young man that you see today. And then took a long journey for me to actually get one. But my mother-in-law looked at me differently. When you hear that story, growing up, what does that make you feel like?
Grateful. Gratitude is the most important thing to me. Gratitude to be on earth, gratitude to have parents, gratitude to have family, gratitude to have friends, and gratitude to have a country to call home. And that's the most important thing to me.
Wow. And the CEO bench would want you to talk about that bit of education. A lot of times we hear that grandmothers paid a lot of respect in teaching and shaping the livelihood of their grandchildren.
Yes.
And we don't know what kind of education they have gone through, or they were taught, or what was going on. And at one point she termed you, her grandchildren, as Buro Nywalomach. We never understood what the context was. Perhaps would you explain that as part of your education and dive into your life of becoming a journey, of becoming an engineer as well?
Awesome. So my dear grandmother and my dear grandfather, who's departed now, I mean, they were some of my very first teachers. And what I learned from them was the importance of thinking, of seeing, of listening, of feeling, and that's what science is all about. You've got to know what's around you. You've got to ask questions and never stop asking questions and always seek. And so when I'd sit down with them, I remember they would never, tell me to stop. I'd keep on asking, and we'd keep on going, and why, what, and so on. But that's great. Yeah. But being in nature was great. It helped build in my childhood a yearning for understanding the science of nature and figuring things out. Being inquisitive, of exploring things, looking into the unknown, but also a value for the importance of people, and the importance of caring for people, and the importance of being grateful. Yeah. And that's kind of helped me become who I am now, and it's kind of helped me become who I may become as I move on, because the story of learning, that journey never ends. But we always go back to our roots. We all go back to the source as we grow, and as we find the nurturing power within. Yeah. It goes back to that.
Wow.
And my grandmother talked about, buru onyualo match. Ashes gave birth to fire. And that's quite interesting for me in many ways. In any of our lives, we may have been through a point where it felt like, there were a lot of ashes around. But ultimately, going back to the science of the hearth, the fireplace around which we all sat each evening, you'd always find the ashes still there. And in those ashes would be one or two embers, just kind of covered up. But they would remain alight. And the ashes would protect that little spark. That little ember would be covered by the ashes. The ash would protect it. And then it would grow. When you now add more wood to it, it would then spark, and the fire would be reborn. So those ashes are actually, a blessing more than anything else. It helps keep those embers burning and gives birth to a new fire, even brighter than the one before.
The CEO Bench will take a break, and when we come back, we want to talk to Peter a little bit more about formal education, growing up and becoming an engineer. Stay right there. We'll be right back after this break. This is CEO Bench.
My name is Dr. Jinpo Olowo. Thank you for watching House of Talent Television. I love to inspire people. I love to talk about my experiences and how God has been able to use me in the different exposures. And through the leadership, through change management and transformation, I've been able to do a couple of things in my life. Now, are you a kind of person who is tired of your status quo? Do you want your situation to change? Are you tired of what is going on in your life? Change is a fact of life. We've all been through experiences in the last couple of months that have taken us to a place where we need to do something about our lives. We need to change whatever is going on. So if you have not piled up investment for yourself, you need to do that. If you've not done businesses to hold your family in future, you need to do that. Are you thinking of full-time employment? You need to be thinking about your life after employment or your business in the next couple of years. So if you want us to chat, if you want us to talk about this, please get in touch with us at SIL Uganda on number 0772443085, or check our website www.siluganda.com, or on all the social media handles. You can hook me up or Facebook, that is Jinpo Olowo, on Instagram, Jinpo Olowo, and on Twitter and LinkedIn. Then we can chat a way forward with you. We can help you, we can coach you, we can walk with you this journey of financial freedom. Thank you.
Welcome back from that break. This is the CEO Bench. My name is Edio Kila, and my guest in the studio today on this particular CEO Bench is Engineer Peter Nyeko Odoko-Nyero, which we have just learned from the show right now. But also there is the BenHur name. How did you leave that out? Welcome back to the program.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Awesome.
What's the background behind the BenHur name?
Well, you know, I wasn't there when
This particular moment of the discussion, Peter, which is your personal journey on the CEO Bench. On the
Awesome.
CEO Bench, we want to know what has been your personal journey as an individual, you know, as a Ugandan, as a young person growing forward, and the way you have moved from Uganda to Europe and back to Uganda. I guess there are very interesting learnings that you've said in that journey. And first, we want to start with your formal education, or your formal, you know, the education that were given to us beyond the traditional that we had, which is the foundation of wisdom anyway, that the other guys were building upon. If you would throw more light on that one, what was the journey like?
I think the journey has been great. You know, it helps to have a mother who's a teacher. You know, my mom's a teacher, and so having your mom as a teacher means you'll learn so much and you'll never stop learning.
Yes.
So home is school. And so that's been the biggest blessing ever, having my mother as a teacher with regards to everything, you know, academic, kind of growing up, English, literature, you know, having my dad as a teacher for science, economics. So kind of having parents who are teachers has made a massive difference in my life growing up. So, I mean, obviously it was great to be, you know, in formal education, you know, and being in a school and having, you know, kind of friends and other teachers and so on. But I believe I've learned more from my parents, you know, with them being teachers, as well as, of course, all the wisdom I've learned from my grandparents and you know, the ecosystem within which I have been blessed to grow up.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, we're talking to Mr. Peter Nyeko, or Engineer Peter BenHur Nyeko Odoko-Nyero, as we have now learned the new name, which means a lot of things in the process and in the background of Peter as an engineer. Peter, becoming an engineer, how did you become an engineer? Let's dive into it.
Awesome. I believe kind of going way back to earliest memories, you know, as a little toddler, looking up to the stars and wanting to know what happens there. I think in one of my many question and answer sessions with those around me, I've tried to figure out, you know, who's the person who made that space station? And someone told me, well, that's an engineer. I was like, okay, great. What must one do to become like that? And they went, well, you know, you've got to enjoy mathematics, you know, and science, which I didn't.
But
growing up, I didn't enjoy mathematics and science so much. I have always been more of an artist, you know, so I've always enjoyed literature, poetry, music, art, history, geography. So science was not really my best friend, and maths was certainly not my best friend. But the passion I had to become someone who would understand the inner workings of, you know, aerospace vehicles eventually made me realize that I could look at maths from an artistic, you know, point of view, and realize that math is art, and that science is art and history.
Wow.
Yeah.
Peter, what is your understanding of leadership?
Leadership is a very interesting term, and I believe leadership comes down to a number of things. It comes down to gratitude, comes down to hope, comes down to servanthood, comes down to sharing, comes down to caring, and comes down to always standing back and putting others' needs before your own.
If you would give us, if you would give us the poetry, you said you were very much in your early part of life more lean towards, art, poetry, literature. You've just defined leadership by your understanding. What would be the best 1 second or 2 minutes poetry for somebody who is watching this program from all across the world?
I would go back to taking my grandmother's words, match, and spinning something poetic out of it. And I'd go, from the dearth of the scorching earth, there lies the embers, and from those embers, there rises hope, burning hope, brightly looking into the future.
Wow. What would you want somebody to understand that from the leadership point of view, by your understanding and definition of leadership?
Awesome. Ultimately, in this illustration we've just put together, the leader is actually the ashes. The leader is the ashes that allows himself to be burnt to nothingness, so that that little spark that's being protected can grow, has the warmth from the previous fire to be nurtured with it, and then is able to spring forth and keep the fire burning.
Wow. Thank you very much for that, Peter. Transformative leadership approach and leadership abilities that often defines a leader's level of effectiveness is part of this journey. We'll dive into your self-leadership, picking yourself up from wherever you are, bringing yourself up to where you are. We believe you've been more of a transformative self-leader than any other type of leader first. And on that note, would you tell us what your understanding of self-leadership is and how has the journey been like for Peter? Because I'm watching this program, I don't know how to lead myself, to find myself, to take myself up. And leadership itself is very difficult for so many people, let alone leadership at the community or even at the family or community or to the nation. What was the journey like, or how have you been able to manage these things coming forward?
I believe focus is very important in life.
Yeah.
It's important to set goals, look ahead, focus, and keep the eye on the goal.
Yeah.
And the goal is not a destination. The goal is actually to always strive for every step to be more hopeful, more grateful, and more of a blessing than the step before. Setting that as the goal makes a massive difference, because when you honor every step on that journey, you get the fuel to keep on moving. When you take every step and every flicker of light that's within that step and cover it with hope, it gives you the power to keep on moving forward. And that's what's most important, the way I look at it. Yes.
I want you to go along and tag and give us your comment if you're enjoying this interview with Peter. We are talking to, the CEO of Mandulis Energy in Uganda, but also a company that's a subsidiary based in the United Kingdom and many other parts of the world. It's not just a small organization living in Uganda, but actually sprouting out of the UK to Uganda and to many other parts of the world. And you will understand why Peter is on the show today, because you nominated him to be on the show. And Peter, they wanted to understand. Let's talk about Peter and how you became the CEO. But before you get there, we want you to tell us, what is Mandulis Energy? What are you doing? Why do people think that the work you're doing is okay? And how is it touching lives of people around in all those areas? You talked about that when we go to the villages, we always find, your name there or the work that you've done there. But there is this whole thing about renewable energy, climate change. Everybody's talking about it, which we're actually going to dive into as we move towards change management and transformation. Let's talk about that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So Mandulis, I'm grateful to be part of the team at Mandulis, grateful to have led the team at Mandulis as we grow. And so at Mandulis, we basically focus on, delivering renewable energy that is affordable, sustainable, reliable, and can be used for productivity. And when we think about renewable energy, we don't think about one type of renewable energy. We think of all different types of renewable energy that can make a difference. So we work with waste to energy, so agricultural waste to electricity, agricultural waste to cooking fuel and heating fuel replacement. We work with also things like kind of animal waste, like cow dung and others, to produce electricity and clean cooking and heating fuel as well. We also look at converting the sunlight we have into electricity as well, and then use all of that electricity for value addition. So that's what we do at Mandulis Energy. We develop and set up projects that are focused on delivering Sustainable Development Goal number 7, which is access to affordable, sustainable, reliable energy.
Wow. Peter, talk to us about your role as a CEO at Mandulis. What is your role as a CEO at Mandulis, and what typically do you do, or your day is like whenever you wake up every single day at Mandulis?
Awesome. My role as a CEO is at a young company as ours is basically not just bearing the vision and helping it grow, but also looking ahead and looking at opportunities that are there to help build the vision even more and help us deliver more impact. So my work is to look at what we're doing day to day, to look at where we're trying to get to, and to look at what needs to be done to help us get to that destination. And in that destination, our destination is basically to create as much impact as we possibly can. So we do have a number of projects that we are setting up. For example, we're developing a 20 megawatt power plant to be installed in Gulu, and that will deliver 20,000 kilowatts of electricity every hour into the grid once it's up and running. So there's a lot of work around the development of that. We're also developing a further 16 locations across the country at about half a megawatt each. That's 500 kilowatts every hour. And that's also taking a lot of work, make sure all of that is working. But we do have operational projects as well, which takes time to make sure they're all operating in the right way. And there we've got 3 locations where 2 of which is power generation ongoing already, a third one where power generation is being set up, and then other locations where there are other productive uses of renewable energy that are being worked on.
Peter, we talked about so much normally about renewable energy. Do people in Uganda understand what renewable energy is, or even in Africa for that matter? Or what is renewable energy if I'm hearing it for the first time and I don't really know what we're talking about here? You keep saying turning waste from food to energy, to power the same food that we're just about to eat. Sometimes we eat and then putting it back. How does this thing really work? I might be here and yet I'm sitting on $1 million, potentials of Okila to make money in renewable energy, but I don't know what it is.
Awesome. Well, I mean, if your chair is made of rice husk, then maybe you're sitting on $1 million. Or granite shells, or coffee husks, or maize cobs. But ultimately, when you think about it, if you want to, for example, power your car, and you use, say, diesel or petrol, that's not renewable because there's a finite amount of fossil fuels available. So once you take it out and burn it, that's it. You've added more carbon to the atmosphere. but there's nothing else where that came from. But if you use something which is renewable, something which is regenerative, something which grows again, that becomes more interesting. If you think of sunlight, which is always going to be there, if you think of agricultural waste, as long as you have agriculture, as long as you have rice, you will have rice husks, which take a long time to decompose. And so if we take those rice husks and convert them into a gas, hydrogen, and the hydrogen can work in your car, or into another gas like syngas that can work in your diesel generator instead of diesel, that becomes quite interesting, because suddenly you now have almost, and you don't have a finite resource anymore, you have a renewable resource, something that can always grow back. And that's what makes it very interesting from that point of view. If you look at hydropower, the water is always, as long as we protect the environment, the water will always be there.
Yeah.
And it keeps on flowing, and it generates electricity as it goes on its way. When we look at wind power, the wind is blowing, and we get electricity from that. Then we can use that electricity to even charge batteries and power electric vehicles like Kira EV, down in Ginger and so on. So it is possible, and I'd say Uganda definitely knows a lot about it, because Uganda is one of the most green places around. Not just the green you see, but the energy we use with regards to electricity generation, most of it is hydro, which is renewable. We're one of the few African countries where there's electric vehicles being manufactured in Uganda already. You've got Kira EV in Ginger that's setting up a massive factory to manufacture electric vehicles. There are other companies, like Zembo, like Butterworks, that are actually making electric vehicles as well. So Uganda is very interesting from that point of view. And if you go around Kampala right now, there are electric butters riding around.
Yes,
that are charged.
Interacted with some of them.
Exactly.
Every 60 kilometers they're riding.
Yes, yeah. And they're all powered through solar. So Uganda is actually making a move forward. And what's exciting about Uganda is the fact that still a lot of Uganda doesn't have access to regular, electricity. A lot of Uganda doesn't have access to sustainable cooking fuels. That's an opportunity. And what's exciting here, and what we've learned from things like mobile money, is that when there's nothing, or where there's nothing, you can leapfrog to the very best. If there's no transport, you can go straight to a Tesla. Why not? If there's no, electricity, why not go for a solar biomass hybrid powered mini grid system like one of the ones we're setting up right now? If there's no transport in the village to go to the hospital, why not use the electric ambulance that we've just deployed? It's possible, and we've learned that because everyone's using mobile money now, in all the rural areas. So it's possible to leapfrog and go right ahead to the best in class technology that's available globally.
Wow. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, Peter and I are going to dive into change management and transformation. Change management would be Peter as an individual, as the CEO, transforming from an ordinary person to a CEO of Mandulis. All right? And moving from that to change from one organization to the next organization. We're going to talk about it. And we're also going to dive a little bit deep about climate change. The change in our environment is happening. The change in our climate is happening. But how are we prepared for it? Perhaps Peter will take us through to the future forecast of what it needs to be and what we need to do to get there. Stay right there. I'll be right back after break. This is the CEO Bench.
For me, leadership is a privilege of moving people towards a destiny. And for me, it would be towards God's agenda. That's the best, moving people to God's agenda. God has an agenda for everybody. And I know some people will say, oh, it's too much of God. But God has a plan for this world. And so whether you're in business, you're a medical personnel, if somebody came to you, a good medical leader says, I want you not only to be healed, but to be healthy. That's the kind of mindset that I see, and it's about self. So if you ask me, am I a leader? By the grace of God, I am a leader, and I am growing as a leader. And I thank God for that privilege of being a leader. And who is a leader to me? It's very simple. Someone that has a vision, but is also someone that is there serving people. For me, that's a leader. Vision is where you want to take things. Serving is the recognition that if the things do not matter to people, drop them.
Wow.
Drop them. Because at the end of the day, whatever we do must make a difference in people's lives. Anybody who has had huge impact in history, in leadership, the impact is not measured by just the things they did, but what those things did for people's lives. Did they make a difference? So it's useless for you to make so much money and the money does not add value to people's lives.
Wow.
So for me, yes, you have to have a vision, and at the end of the day, you are serving people. It doesn't change. Leadership is leadership, whether it is at what we would call a lower level or a top level. Leadership is leadership. It's about influence. It's that influence that comes from you have a vision and you are serving people. So what changes is the level of responsibility, but the other one that people don't like is the level of accountability. You see, Jesus said, to whom much is given, much will be required. So
it is the CEO Bench. My name is Edio Kela, and in the studio is the CEO of Mandulis Energy, Mr. Peter Nyeko. Or if you're not an engineer, you call him Mr. If you're an engineer, it's Engineer Peter Nyeko. Welcome back to the program, Peter. Peter, we're going to dive straight to change management and development within self, business, or a similar organization or a nation. We're going to talk about this. And on that note, I want to drive you straight. After that, we will talk about the control, identification, and implementation of required changes within self, as well as business, as well as a similar organization like yours or a nation. And we will close this discussion with what's next for a leader at the CEO level like you, and change management level moving forward or coming out. What do you do when you say, I'm done as a CEO, I'm putting up the boots and I'm going? How would we remember you? What would you have done for us to remember you? Let's dive straight there and go more specifically to my first question, which will be on the climate change. You've been talking about renewable energy, you've talked about quite very interesting stuff, but I want to take you to something more specific to the nomination for this interview, which is the question on climate change. A lot of things have been talked about climate change and across the world, and we don't quite understand it. We in the African continent, we don't know whether we actually understand what it is very much, or the context to it, because we have not experienced a lot of change in the climate, but it's coming. And you can see that the sun is beginning to become hot at certain hours, but in Europe, it's quite understood. Perhaps, Peter, with so many billionaires and governments across the world or bodies invested so much in these industries that cause or produce pollutions all across the world, and Uganda is no different, or any other African country is no different from this, the issues of climate change will only seem like an anti-profit call. Normally, when we talk about climate change, it's like an anti-profit call to their investments, and they will always look at it that way. Peter, how do you hope to go about this addressing their fears as the CEO of Mandulis with your work?
Awesome, thank you. So climate change is real, you know, and it's not a case of opinion, but you know, the world has come to realize that it's real.
Yeah.
Almost every country in the world has ratified, you know, the agreements that everyone has come together to agree that we've got to do something about what's going on, about the heating up of the climate and the earth. And we all know that at a certain point, if the ice caps start melting, you know, if the sea levels start rising, a lot of places we love where other people live will go underwater. A lot of places where we live will turn into deserts. And it's something that we're realizing a lot more even right here in Africa. I went for a little tour a few weeks ago, and I was talking to people in rural areas, farmers, and I asked them what's going on. They went, well, you know, there was not enough rain. Harvests have not come out as well as they should have. We don't know what's going on, but we do know as well that there are a lot less trees than there were before.
Yeah.
And we probably all remember learning a few things, you know, in primary school about, you know, the importance of trees to rain. And we definitely know the importance of rain to cultivation. We're a nation, you know, by sun and fertile soil grown, as our anthem says. So grown, sun and fertile soil, the missing link that we know very well is water. And that cycle is definitely going to be hurt when we think of how most of us cook our food. And when we think about the fact that we mostly use charcoal in cities and urban areas, and that charcoal is cut from trees, and then trees are not always planted again, so we're losing our forest cover. Even some of our factories need heat for their processes, and they will either use coal, which they have to import, or use wood once again. So it's actually very important for us to realize that the more of us, because at the moment, you know, according to a study by the Ministry of Energy in Uganda and Mineral Development, the renewable energy side of it, I believe close to 90% of energy that's used in Uganda comes from wood, from trees.
Yeah.
And most of that goes to obviously cooking and industrial use. So if we switch from cooking with firewood and charcoal to cooking with other, you know, things like, you know, cooking fuel made from waste instead, be it biogas or be it briquettes or pellets, that can make a difference, because suddenly we know in another generation, trees that are being planted today will not be cut. And we may see things change. And that's what it comes down to from a point of view that everyone can basically understand. And that's a very good conversation for us out here. Because without our agriculture, where will all our villages be? And where will we be? And that's that's a big question. So it's that's kind of very interesting from that particular angle. But then secondly, Uganda as a nation, our parliament, you know, I believe it was at some point in April, passed the Climate Change Bill to Climate Change Act. And that means, you know, now mitigating climate change and, you know, looking after our environment is actually a law now. As a Ugandan, any of us, or as someone living in Uganda, we all have an obligation to make sure we are doing what we can to make sure we live sustainably, we protect the environment, we protect the ecosystems, and we help ensure that this Uganda that we live in now, that we say is gifted by nature, will remain gifted by nature for 10 more generations. It's our role to make sure we not just keep it the way we found it, but make it even better than what we got from our forefathers. And that's a challenge to us. And I believe we can.
We're talking to Peter, and you're on the CEO bench. You can also have your thoughts coming through. Kisses and dishes are welcome to the CEO. The CEOs on this bench are always happy people. They don't throw a stone. they give back explanation, and that's what leadership is all about. Peter, what a wonderful conversation right there, and that answer that you've given to that question. But I want to take you to my next question, which is, why instead of all working to curb emissions, like the world is all talking about, can't we work on building back forest by planting trees, like in Uganda or in Africa? And if it's the world, like in Europe or Americas or, you know, the Antarctic, which, you know, Antarctica as they call it, where things are a little bit more difficult, can we just look at genetically engineered trees to increase, you know, the CO2 uptake, as well as the CO2, you know, to remove their fears from, you know, the human beings, as we are saying that the dangers are coming very close than ever before?
So it's got to be both. It's got to be both. We've got to mitigate the effects of climate change. We've got to, you know, mitigate and reduce our emissions. Most definitely, we've got to make sure there's less carbon dioxide, you know, in the atmosphere and all the other greenhouse gases. But at the same time, as we change the way we move to, say, electric vehicles, change the way we cook to, say, you know, either electric cookers if we're in the city, or biogas or briquettes, as we make those changes to ensure trees are not needing to be cut. Of course, we have to replant those that we've cut before. There's a lot of work to do. It's a two-way street, you know, and we've got to make sure we are reducing our consumption in ways that destroy the environment and destroy the earth, while at the same time healing and correcting what was previously damaged. When we do both together, then we have a fighting chance of handing on to those who come beyond us a better earth than what we got, and not a worse one.
Wow. Peter, why is climate change that we are talking about in big boardrooms all across the world not being explained to a common person like you are doing right now? That just a mere planting trees in Soroti or in Gulu or in Lira or in Mbarara or in Nakapiripirit or wherever, or in Fort Portal, is far more important than cutting the trees. And making people understand this is actually far more important to, you know, the help about climate change and the reversal of the effect of our negativity or our actions that we're now facing today. Why is this not being explained very easily by the technocrats like you?
I don't know why, but all I say is maybe they are trying to explain, but maybe the message is not coming through.
Yeah.
But if I come to Uganda and localize it right here, everywhere you go, every village you go, you'll find a tree. You'll probably find a tree in a home, and that tree more often than not will be a mango tree. We know that mangoes give us food, we know that mangoes give us shade, and we know that mangoes also sequester carbon and remove carbon dioxide from the air. That's one easy way of looking at it, you know, because as long as there's still a market for mangoes, there's actually money in that as well. You don't have to cut the wood, sell the mangoes. Pretty sure there are a few factories out there that I won't mention that probably import mangoes into the country for lots of reasons. But if we figure out the kind of mangoes they want and need, figure out how to keep them in the right way so that the quality is perfect, the trees we plant in our gardens to green the atmosphere and, you know, kind of reverse climate change slowly, can actually bring us an income as well as nutrition for the family as well. Not just mango trees, you know, guava trees, orange trees, lots of fruits there that can grow, and it makes a difference, you know. Why not?
Wow. That's the CEO of Mandulis Energy, Mr. Peter Nyeko, talking to us about change management, in particularly climate change. We're talking about climate change. Peter, your next question before we can serve you a cup of coffee. The CEOs are always known for having a cup of coffee when they get tired mid-morning. Perhaps we have talked to you long enough and deserving of a cup of coffee. But first, we go back to your next question before we can give you a cup of coffee. Matt, be turning a little bit hot in here. Using renewable energy is a great idea, Peter. But it seems like only the wealthy can convert this. When we talk about this, it seems like only the wealthy can convert this. There is Okada in all the streets of Africa now, running. Recently, the English people finally made border becomes the English language. The origin of that language is now here, meaning the man on a motorcycle is called a border. The one who rides a motorcycle and carries people for money as a means of transport. That's how it's defined in the English dictionary. Now, on to this question, renewable energy is a great idea, just to give you the perspective, but it seems like only the wealthy people can convert this. What can be done to eliminate that so that the alternative energies and affordable to everyone can be something that we can achieve with the help of companies like, organizations like Mandulis to the common person?
And this brings us back to the question you asked earlier. If you look at leadership in the private sector, leadership in engineering, leadership in energy, an energy company, and I speak about every energy company out there, an energy company should think about the people who they're here to serve. And should think about it and think, all right, should I think about the people I'm going to serve and ask myself, what is the ability to pay for my product or my service? Or should I think about it in terms of how can I make sure I help them become in a better place than they were before my service or my product got there? And how can my service or my product help them afford more than what they can afford now? That's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
It's important for us innovators in renewable energy to make sure we target above all to not only make our services or products bring back, profits, but we should think about it from a point of view of going, great, not only what can people afford, no. If we think about what people can afford today, we're taking where they are and reducing them to a lower place. If we think about where they are and where we can get them to using what we provide, then that changes the narrative totally. So we look at it from that point of view, and we believe that it is actually possible. Not only do we believe, we've actually made it possible already. Every product we deliver, which is renewable, we deliver profitably, but at a lower price than the competing non-renewable product. Every service, even the kilowatt hour of electricity that we deliver profitably and commercially in an ecosystem is cheaper than the same kilowatt hour from any other alternative. And we do all that without resorting to subsidies and more burdens on the taxpayer. But rather, our job is to innovate and make sure what we deliver makes a difference in those communities around us. And that's what needs to get out there a lot more loudly. If we're able to be the very best that we can be in other sectors, if we can have the best doctors, if we can have the best, everything else, let's also take this seriously and make sure that us in the energy sector, in the renewable energy sector, especially, show cause to help people forget the idea that renewable energy is expensive, because it isn't. It totally isn't. It's actually cheaper. It's actually more reliable. It's actually more productive. It makes a massive difference. There is no need for subsidies. No, not at all.
If you're watching the show, we're talking to the CEO of Mandulis Energy, Mr. Peter Nyeko, or Engineer Peter Nyeko, depending on how you would want to put it. And I want to say thank you very much for all of you guys watching the show all across the world, and those who stayed up awake in the United States of America, thank you very much, and welcome back from Afghanistan. You've done very well for yourself. And of course, those who are watching from Australia, thank you very much that you're staying away from the dangerous species so that you can watch Peter talk about climate change. And to those who are watching from the United Kingdom, thank you very much for staying a little bit more while we dive to the next question, so that you don't sweat so much in answering these questions, but apply your mind to how can we get the Ugandans who are living in the diaspora to come back home and be part of this conversation we're having today on the CEO Bench.
Awesome. Awesome.
Well, you can also serve yourself a cup of coffee from the comfort of your sitting room or from your office, and make sure that you enjoy the cup of coffee. The coffee we're serving today is a testament of making environment a better place for us. It's from Bududa in the eastern part of the country, in Mbale side, and the farmers there have grown this coffee so that the CEO who sits here and drink this coffee can appreciate them. Would you buy the coffee from them, by the way?
I will actually do even better, I hope. They would think so too. I will make a commitment to go to Bududa, you know, find this coffee farmers group, figure out what they do with their waste, and help them earn some extra money from their waste.
Wow.
And also, if any of them spend any money on cooking fuel that is not sustainable, I'll commit to making sure they can access sustainable, clean cooking fuel at a much lower cost than they would have spent beforehand. So the difference is this: going there, buying their waste, they earn money by me going there. Secondly, making sure whatever they were spending before, they now spend less. So if I buy their waste and what I sell to them is cheaper than what they spent before, they're in a better place than they were before I got in. I don't need to hire a consultant to prove that their life is improved. It's simple mathematics. And it's poetic.
Yes. Time for a coffee break. We'll be right back after this.
The private sector is not yet fully utilized because not everybody can be employed by government. And we are looking at a future whereby more people are employed in the private sector than in government. So I think if we all work hard, if we all work together and invest in the right areas, there's been a lot of talk about value addition in the agriculture sector, in the mineral sector. If there is enough investment in those areas, I think it can create enough jobs for our children and grandchildren.
Be an image for women out there who are doing something, who are struggling, and to tell them there is something better. I want to be part of working with organizations that are supporting communities to grow, community organizations like Bosco Uganda, local organizations to build their capacities, strengthen the institutions so that they continue to do the great work they're doing out there. So I want to be a part of that. So I thank APC, I thank Horizon 3000, the organization I worked with, the Austrian government through the Austrian Development Agency. I thank Accenture, I thank Notre Dame University. I thank UNICEF, but the UNICEF did a lot with Bosco Uganda to reach out to schools. So I am a woman who wants to ensure that whatever we're doing, we are counting for results. That every intervention we do must transform lives. And we want to ensure that people are in the driving seat. The communities, the young people, the youth, that they are on the driving seat. So designing programs with them. As we go out to do studies, get their views. So what we did is to go and actually listen to the different actors, players in the whole ecosystem of health, from the district health officers, biostats, in charges of facility, sub-county chiefs, they now call them SAS, the patients even, to get their views. So it's so important that we get the views of the people and the change that they want to see, so that we define that change process and be able to work towards what we want to see. So you asked many questions, so I hope I am answering it.
Yes.
But I really believe that
Yeah.
as a woman who
Yeah.
wants to see my children and all other children, I'm really so passionate about young people, children, women, men, who working together, whether it's at the family level, work together. Why do you fight? Put your efforts together, put your resources together. I have seen families where the man is working,
Yes.
the woman is working, but it's only the man who is spending the money in the family.
Yes.
What is the money of the woman doing? Why not work together? Because together you can go far.
Yeah.
But if you stand as an individual, you're going to fail.
It is the CEO Bench, and welcome back from that coffee break. Peter, welcome back to the show. We want to
Awesome.
toss to this conversation going forward. Now, take us back to, before we went for a break, you were talking, the question was about the Ugandans in the diaspora. Should they come back as the climate change, now that you lived abroad and came back and are doing these things? Has the climate change, or climate change is not working for them?
Awesome. Well, think about it this way. I mean, it's obviously not easy to fly nowadays with, with the global public health issue that's raging, in every country right now. But, and I also understand the world is a global village. People who may have lived away for many years have built lives in other places and so on. But it is possible, to basically figure out a way to be both here and there and everywhere. It's a short flight, and you can actually take a long weekend as long as you can handle jet lag quite well. For not too much money. Based on those economies, you can fly over and check things out and see what makes sense. You can look at, your areas of expertise and look at where the need may be out here, and you might be pleasantly surprised that, the economy out here is not too bad by any standards. And you might realize that, it's possible to create something that makes a difference, yet is also profitable in this ecosystem. So I think people just need to come over, not just for a short holiday, but spend a bit more time, kind of understand what's going on, look at what's needed, look at what's possible, and get involved.
Wow. Peter, thank you very much for that. I hope that our brothers and sisters in the diaspora has gotten that message quite clear. There are a lot of opportunities back home here. Let's get back to climate change. Change management is the process of moving from one place to the next. It requires that it is communicated. You have moved from different investment banks in the UK, making decision to come back to Uganda. At one point, you had a big dream of starting, sort of like putting us back to the good old days of UTC with the Dream Shuttle. That didn't work. What happened? And you are here now in renewable energy, now in climate change. Those are all processes of change management. How are you able to do it, Peter? I'm stuck in my desk somewhere in a corporate world or in my sitting room. I don't know where to start from. How do I move from these places?
Simple. Follow the problem. Follow the problem and look at the problem for what it really is. A request inviting us to curate a solution. And wherever we go, whatever we look at, there is always a problem that needs a solution. Or there is a solution that needs improving. Or there are things being done that could be done slightly differently that makes everything a lot better. So there is need everywhere. And having that mindset that there are no problems, but only opportunities to curate and create solutions, it makes life so much more joyful.
Yes.
For the blessing that it is.
What's your say on that one? You've heard from Peter. Peter BenHur Nyeko Odokonyero is the man on the show today on the CEO Bench, and we're talking to him. And now this part of the show is about change management and transformation. Peter, what assurance can you give? In fact, before I dive into that one, do you think that transition to 100% renewable energy will be expensive? If Uganda wakes up today or Africa wakes up today and say, here we go.
I think if we look at energy, not as electricity only, but as kind of every type of energy that's used, we are already almost 100% renewable for electricity. We've done incredible. So we're right in front, front of the class, tip top, first class. Where we need to do a lot of work now is shifting to 100% renewable for cooking. That's a very simple thing. And we can go to Bududa, we can go to Kasese, 2 places on other sides of Uganda, one in the east, one in the west. Places that have had issues with landslides, rock slides, and floods. When we go there, we can ask the people out there, the mothers, the grandmothers, and the young men who are farmers, and others, and the kids, and go, what has changed? Well, we know the slides happened, but what else has changed? And as you sit around, they'll tell you, there are less trees. Okay. We are planting higher up the slope now. Okay. Oh, we are planting non-indigenous trees. Okay. So what does that mean? It means there's a purpose that those trees had. And that's, when we look at it from that point of view, all of us in the city, all of us in urban areas are connected in this country, in most parts of Africa, to our people in rural areas. And we know their issues day to day. You can call your grandmother and go, all right, what happened today? There was a rock slide. Oh, what happened the other day? So as we start replanting trees, as we start getting the ecosystem back with indigenous trees, think about it this way, all right? If you've got trees on a slope with the roots holding all of that soil together, and underneath that soil are rocks. If you cut the trees, and the trees fall down, and the trees become charcoal, and they're used in Kisimenti to make very nice michomo. Now, up there's now no more roots to hold the soil together over the rocks.
Yeah.
When the rain falls, the rocks come down and destroy everything below it.
Yeah.
If we don't grow food in a sustainable manner, and we use a lot of non-organic fertilizers, we basically destroy the soil, and we don't do crop rotation by planting beans after maize and so on and so forth. And we decide to plant higher up, again we cut trees again as well. All of that leads to that issue, and in the end it affects all of us because we're all connected to someone in rural areas. So when we realize in the urban area that the choice we make with regards to how our food was cooked has a direct impact on our people in rural areas, when the conversation changes to that, it becomes a lot more interesting. And when the conversation changes to some from the rural area coming out and telling you in the urban area, please, I don't want a rock to come over my house.
Yeah.
I don't want mud to come over my house when my kids are sleeping. Please don't use charcoal for cooking. When that's understood, that message can go through, and it'll be a piece of cake. It'll be actually a Rolex. As easy as a Rolex.
Of Kampala. Wow.
Yeah.
Peter, on that note, what assurance can you give that this is actually doable? That's number one. And there was a lot of rhetoric at the UN climate change talks in Paris about getting to 100% clean energy by 2050. I think the Donalds received a fair share of it, and so was the Obamas. But what does it really take to do that? First of all, is it possible? What does it really take to do that? There's a lot of jokes about it.
Commitments have been made.
Yes.
France has made commitments, the UK has made commitments, Japan has made commitments, even China has made commitments.
Has Africa made commitments?
Africa has made commitments. Uganda has a Climate Change Act now. We have made commitments. Yeah. And any company now, I ask you, anyone, go to Uganda Parliament website, Google that law and figure out what's there. There's good things for anyone who follows that new law. Yeah. There are, good things there for those who can help keep Uganda green and keep Uganda blessed by nature and gifted. But there's also a bit of scolding in there for those who don't.
Yes.
So people should wake up now and realize, if people like, CNOOC and Total and Tullow have already made commitments, towards climate change. What about us here in Uganda? Wherever we are, whether I run a shop or a business or whatever, what am I doing and how can I fit in and what can I learn from there? You know, and that's a lot that we can basically do, and I believe it is definitely possible to do that. We can make that commitment, and in Uganda we can actually go fully renewable in a very short period of time. Our population is not as big as other countries. The fact that there's not much archaic infrastructure to change, but rather the opportunity to build anew, we can actually make that point to build new, build wise, and build affordable and profitable. Because that's what's really exciting, and there's a lot of support, you know, that can make things possible. And it is really, really, really possible. A factory can switch today and go, all right, I will no longer use firewood, I will use rice husks converted, or maize cobs converted, or coffee husks converted. You know, a farmer can say, you know, for my acres, I will no longer use non-organic chemical fertilizers, I will use, you know, fertilizers that are made from the residue of biogas, from, you know, like where people have biogas toilets instead of setting up, you know, pit latrines and so on. A lot that we can actually do. And if we simply set one simple target, Uganda goes clean cooking, 100%. If we do that, I believe in a very short period of time, we will realize, the air smells nicer. Quite interesting. Because if you look at everything else, if petrol, diesel, electricity, all of that is just 10% of our energy usage, and 90% is wood. The big work for us to do is to actually cook clean and run our factories cleaner. I'll give an example. If you think about it from this point of view, if it's a circular economy now where nothing is thrown to waste, where everything has another use, suddenly farmers will have more income to buy the things that your factory manufactures. If you use their waste to power your factory, you can sell more of your product to them because they now have more money. And so, it's an interesting cycle. And it's really interesting from that point of view. And I believe there's a lot of hope. There is a lot of hope. And we just have to get on with it.
This is the CEO Bench. Mr. Peter Nyeko, Engineer Peter BenHur Nyeko Odokonyero, is the son of the soil, grown up in Uganda, or born and raised in Uganda, but not fully, and went to the UK when he was about 5 or so, and lived in the streets of London for many years, and worked in the streets of London, educated there, back in Uganda, and now thinking of how the knowledge built from the United Kingdom can be used in Uganda to change things in Uganda and all across Africa, working in collaborations with such people he has worked with all the way from Boeing back to Uganda. What a journey. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have a question for Peter, you better punch in right now, because we're just hastening to the evening of this show. Peter, do you think that the recent floods in Uganda, as well as, you know, in Chennai, India, are a result of climate change?
Think about it this way. What is climate? And if there are floods where there were no floods before, or if there are floods to an extent where there were no, different from the extent before, then there's definitely a change happening. And if we think of the climate and the environment, the ecosystem, then it has changed. So the fact that it is because it is.
Yeah. Well, if you get it, you get it. I know Peter's just given us that. I told you he's more of an artist than an engineer. And then engineering is about solving problems in our community and our society. And those who've studied engineer, we respect them because it's about finding solutions to the problems and giving solutions to the problem. Peter, as we go to the final close of the show, we want to wrap up really quick because of your time. And we want to say thank you to everybody. But will your plan effectively help the drought in the northern Uganda? and any parts of the country in Africa, in Uganda and across the Africa, if at all it works? Will your plan help them? And if we have no water to work with, that effectively take out the mode of power, I would like to see why, or rather a way, designed to help replenish water sources. From you, Mandulis, the CEO, and the people you're working with. Throw more light there quickly.
What's very interesting is, we think based on an ecosystem approach.
Yeah.
We look at everything that's important. We don't just talk about energy, but we think about what the energy is needed for. So we look at healthcare, that's why we work with electric ambulances. We look at, access to water. That's why we look at, water pumping, water cleaning and so on. But ultimately, it comes down to this. Very simple once again. Mm-hmm. If everyone stops cooking with firewood, if everyone stops using firewood in their factories, everyone stops using charcoal made from firewood, the trees will flourish. When the trees flourish, I believe there will be more rain. And when there is more rain, I believe there'll probably be more water as well. So it's like a very interesting one from that point of view. But secondly, when there are more trees, the land, which was previously, losing its grip and swimming down, wherever it may be, that land, that soil can be more firm. And, also the foliage that falls from the trees makes the soil more fertile. The trees, there's flowers, bees can flourish. Bees are very important for the ecosystem. So just simply not cooking with firewood can change all of that for us in this country. Secondly, we've got to think of everyone who currently works in the business of firewood and the business of charcoal. We have to deliver a solution which enables them to still make a living, to still look after their children, to still survive and flourish and thrive. That means delivering solutions which can get waste into cooking fuel replacement through the existing supply chains. So everyone who previously made a living from what we term as non-sustainable solutions switches to sustainable solutions, still makes a difference, still makes a living, but more importantly, thrives even more. Because what you said earlier was the economy might not understand that renewable energy, climate-friendly solutions are actually profitable. They're actually really profitable. When people understand that you can make a lot more money if you don't cut that tree, they will definitely not cut that tree.
We already know that Uncle
Yes.
PK, just down the western side, is reaping money from the city of Kigali, from just telling everyone, don't cut trees. And he's become an ambassador to that effect. Peter, well, we're going to bring this to a close. And perhaps this is my last question to you as we close the show. One time I asked a friend of mine in Europe a question about electric cars. We've talked about electric cars for a bit. We've talked about these things. And this was his answer. I asked him, what do you think about it coming from you, Africa? And this is what he said. I'm more interested in autonomous vehicles. I will take a gas-burning autonomous car over a clean electric car any day, any time. In my view, is that possible?
So the reality is this. So things have changed, all right? A few years ago, we had December 2015, we had COP21 in Paris, the Paris Climate Agreement, which has been ratified, and it's part of this new Uganda law, which I just talked about.
Yeah.
And almost every country in the world is on board with that.
Yeah.
In a couple of months, in November, the whole world is going to Scotland for COP26, and more commitments will be made. In the run-up to that, almost every country has made commitments already, but also big companies have. But most interesting is this. In most of Europe, there will be no more petrol or diesel cars manufactured very soon. And by very soon, I mean probably as early as 2030 to 2040. There'll be no more diesel or petrol cars manufactured. There'll be no more diesel or petrol cars even on the road. So when you look at it from that point of view, even though some people in those communities may not have felt they were fully ready for the shift is happening. And in not too long, that shift will have happened. Even ships are shifting. You know, a massive shipping line switched to biofuels earlier. Even in the aviation sector, which I know a lot about because that's where I spent a lot of my career before moving into entrepreneurship, there is a shift going on to renewable powered, airplanes as well. So our legacy as a generation or as a series of generations to have lived through the world at this point. And that's what's happening right now. And I'm really proud of Uganda for having at least 3 electric vehicle companies already in the country. And I'm really proud of Ugandans for having come on board and kind of made that possible. And I feel we have a lot to share with our neighbors in Africa and in other areas that want to see how it's possible to make things happen at a low cost, despite not having the infrastructure that others have. We've chosen as a country, whether we know it or not yet, but we have chosen to take that massive leap forward into what others feel may be the unknown, but what we feel is the land of hope.
Peter, parting shot. Question to somebody who is watching. We will not have time to respond to some of their questions, to some of their, comments. Is climate change a hoax?
Well, climate change is real. It's as real can be. And the fact that we've seen it happen around us, the fact that when we go to rural areas we see the impacts of it, the fact that the whole world has come together to make commitments to fix the issues that have been caused by us allowing destruction to go on unabated. The fact that we've all decided to come together and make a difference now. And the fact that even in Uganda, we've not only made a decision, but we've taken a great leap forward. That should give us all a lot of hope that it is possible. But think about this, is very important, wherever you may be. If you work in the coal industry, you can still keep your job. You can still work with biochar instead of coal. You don't have to change any of your infrastructure. If you're in the oil and gas industry and you have to keep on running diesel vehicles, you can still run them on, biofuels. If you're in the charcoal industry, and the wood industry, you can still use renewable fuels through your existing supply chains. No one has to lose their job. Rather, it is possible today to do exactly what you did before, but just in a different way, whereby you can make things a difference. And even if you're a poacher, for crying out loud, and you know how to follow dung, to get the elephants that you want to take down, because the elephants are crucial co-builders of the climate. You can collect cow dung instead and bring it to a bioenergy company that will buy that from you and produce more electricity. Put your skills to use. Every skill you have, whatever it may be, it's possible to still keep that skill, still do it, still use it to make a better place for you and future generations, and earn even more money while caring for the earth. It's not about shutting people out. It's not about cancel culture. No, it's about coming together, sitting around the fireplace and deciding we love this world that we've been given because it loves us. And we're grateful for the creation that we are and that is around us. And we're ready to work together and ready to be committed to make sure that whatever we do makes it a better place for everyone.
Ladies and gentlemen, in some circles known to me is Mr. Goblet. and in many other circles known as Engineer Peter Nyeko, has been our guest on the CEO Bench. Engineer Peter Nyeko, take it away with a poem like you always do for climate change for Uganda. Over to you.
Awesome. I will give honor where honor is due. I am most grateful to His Holiness Pope Francis for inspiring, through the Laudato Si encyclical, inspiring a movement towards looking after the common home we have, which is the earth. And the words he said when he had his TED Talk, you go out and watch it. Very great TED Talk he made. But he used these words. He said, the future does have a name, and its name is hope. A tiny little flicker of light that feeds on hope is enough to shatter any shield of darkness. God bless you all.
It's a wrap from us here. Until next time, the CEO Bench, Edio Killer, Engineer Peter Nyeko, signing out. Shout out to all the team that makes this possible here, and to all of you guys who watch the program and makes it really amazing. We are super, super excited to always have you around, and we're looking forward to making it even to a bigger platform. Until then, God bless, and stay focused, stay safe, stay changing the climate back to where it was.
My name is Dr. Jinpo Olowo. Thank you for watching House of Talent Television. I love to inspire people. I love to talk about my experiences and how God has been able to use me in the different exposures. And through the leadership, through change management and transformation, I've been able to do a couple of things in my life. Now, are you a kind of person who is tired of your status quo? Do you want your situation to change? Are you tired of what is going on in your life? Change is a fact of life. We've all been through experiences in the last couple of months that have taken us to a place where we need to do something about our lives. We need to change whatever is going on. So if you have not piled up investment for yourself, you need to do that. If you've not done businesses to hold your family in future, you need to do that. Are you thinking of full-time employment? You need to be thinking about your life after employment or your business in the next couple of years. So if you want us to chat, if you want us to talk about this, please get in touch with us at SEAL Uganda on number 0772443085, or check our website www.sealuganda.com, or on all the social media handles. You can hook me up or Facebook, that is Jinpo Olowo, on Instagram, Jinpo Olowo, and on Twitter and LinkedIn. Then we can chat a way forward with you. We can help you, we can coach you, we can walk with you this journey of financial freedom. Thank you.